Keith Livingston here with Healthy Intelligent Training. Today I'm talking with Andy Buchanan, who's a two-time Australian National Senior Men's Cross-Country Champion. Also recently ran 28.26 for 10,000 metres on the track at the Zatopek meeting late last year. And we're just going to be talking with Andy about how he's managing with his training in this current situation and about his career so far and how he manages to stay at national level in a small country town. Well, it's not a small country town, is it, Andy? Over to you.
No, it's not a small country town. I like Bendigo. It's got everything. It's got everything you need, but it's not too busy. So I love Bendigo. But no, thanks for having me on, Keith. It's going to be good. We often chat running for a while down at the local cafe, but yeah, we haven't been able to do that for a while, so it's going to be good to have a chat over Zoom.
I didn't make you one.
Yeah, right. Must still be coming.
How did you start running, Andy?
So I got involved at a pretty young age because my parents are both runners. So they were involved in a local running club here in Bendigo. So that's one of the good things about Bendigo. It has a range of running clubs to really suit the individual. So I was involved in that kind of coming through primary school, and then my parents they were marathon runners. So I thought the normal holiday was going the Gold Coast to do the Gold Coast Marathon, or to go down to Melbourne to the Melbourne Marathon. So I kind of grew up with running being a normal sport, and that I thought most people did marathons. I didn't think my parents were unnormal or anything like that. I thought that's what everyone did. So pretty lucky, I think, and just kind of, and I suppose, got started in the school system. We're quite lucky that every school does an athletics meet and a cross-country meet. So you kind of, I got involved in that, and I don't know if I liked it or I was good at it. I'm not really too sure. But I don't know what got me in. But yeah, just kind of did that through school, and then, yeah, had the running club to do a bit through as well. So probably mainly family would be the main reason I got into running, I'd say.
And I take it you're still very much enjoying it.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. And thinking back from when I was kind of a junior, it's changed a lot, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy challenging myself and pushing myself and kind of setting goals and working towards those goals, and that feeling of, like, kind of after a big race or a good result, of knowing how much work you've put in, and it's purely because of the work that you've put in, not because of your teammate had a really good game or something like that. So I really like the sport, and then I also just like running. Like I'd happily run without any races. Like it's I just like getting out in the bush. Like, we're so lucky here in Bendigo to have so much bushland. So I enjoy all my runs. There's definitely there is the odd run that I don't enjoy, but that's the thing when you're doing it so often. I think there's always going to be, it's not all enjoyment. But no, I still really love the sport, and the good thing is you can kind of, it is one sport, but there's so many different distances and all that kind of stuff that are so different. Like, if you're training for a 5K compared to a half marathon or a marathon, it's nearly like a different sport. So I've enjoyed that, and I've enjoyed having a crack at a range of different distances. So that's what I think keeps me quite fresh in a way, in that we're kind of mixing up the distances every now and then, so you're not just doing the same stuff over and over. So,
and you've been quite successful over a range of distances. Like I think you've won early on your first state title. Was that over 1,500? Is that correct?
Was actually. So I think that, I don't know what year, it might have been 2017 or 16. Probably 2 weeks before state 15, I went to Vic Milers race, and it was down in, I think it was at Box Hill, and I actually didn't have a fast enough time to get into the A race, but luckily someone pulled out, so I got into the A race, and I was the slowest qualifier, and I think my PB before that was 3:51, and I ended up winning the race in 3:46. So I ran a pretty big PB and was the slowest in there, and managed to win. And then, yeah, I ended up running in 3:45 at the state champs for the final to win that, and that's still my PB. So I think I can run faster, but we've never really focused a lot on 1500. So, and especially as my distances have gone out, I haven't done a lot of 1500 running since. So I think that will be my PB forever now, but I'm happy with that PB.
Oh yeah, that's a good PB. Better than my PB, which means it's good. On that sort of subject, recently I read that Chris Wardlaw's PB for 1500 meters was 344.1 or something like that. But at the time, his best 400 was 57 point. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, because I actually reckon if I can run 8 or 10 400s at kind of that 60, like with a good recovery from 60 to 62, and I feel normal. But if any time I try and run a 59 or a 58, it feels really, really fast. So it is surprising, but I'm not really surprised, because I know that if I tried to run an all-out 400, like I'd feel like I would be running, like I'd probably run a 58 and it would feel like I was running like 52 or 53 or something, just because you're moving so fast. So I'm not surprised, but I reckon mine would be pretty similar. I don't reckon I could run much faster than a 57. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
That is testimony to what steady running does for the body and your ability to endure. So that brings me to your current program, and you've been coached for a few years by Scott Westcott, correct?
Yeah. So Scotty's up in Newcastle.
How did you get to be coached by a guy in Newcastle?
Yeah, he was working for Athletics New South Wales at the time. And with my job at school, I needed to get some coaching accreditation. So I enlisted in the AV, Athletics Victoria coaching course. And I was down there with Tim Crosby. He was running the course. And Scott was actually down watching how the course runs, because he was going to do the same thing up in New South Wales. He was going to deliver the courses. So he come down to see how Tim was doing it. And at the time, I wasn't really taking my running that seriously. I was still at uni. I was enjoying living the uni lifestyle, and didn't really have anyone in Bendigo to keep track or to push me or anything like that. So I was just kind of floating along, not really doing a lot. And yeah, when the course finished, there was a lot of PT people that were there who were just kind of doing it just to get the certificate and that kind of stuff as well. And they kind of cleared out pretty early. So I was stuck there chatting to Tim and Scott, and I was pretty nervous because Scott, a few years before, had finished 4th at the Com Games marathon in Melbourne. And I knew him through that and had heard of his name and all that kind of stuff. And Tim said, "Oh, Scott needs a lift to the airport. That's on the way to Bendigo. Could you give him a lift?" I thought, "Oh shit, I've got to give this guy a lift. I've never even spoken to him." And I was quite nervous, and a city boy driving in Melbourne. So yeah, managed to get into the airport, and yeah, we spoke the whole way. And he just kind of said, "Oh, I think you've got some talent. I think you should look to give running a red hot crack." And I kind of drove the whole way back to Bendigo, so an hour and a half, just kind of thinking, "Oh, maybe I should give this running a bit more of a crack and see what I can do." So yeah, reached out to a guy that's coached by Scott that I was mates with, and he just kind of said, "Give him a call. This is his number." And I was like, "Oh, geez, I'm not that up front." So I sent him a message, and then we ended up having a chat. And he said, "Yeah, I'm happy to take you on, and we'll see where we go." And I don't know. I don't think he would have ever thought that it would have eventuated into someone running 28, 26 for 10K from that initial chat. But nah, it's really developed. Like we're good mates, and I've only seen him 5 or 6 times. So it's funny the relationship you can get between a coach and an athlete.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really lucky to have him on board.
Yeah, it sounds great. And he actually made the Rio Olympics when he was over 40, didn't he? Or around there?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, so he went to Berlin and qualified in 2015. I can't remember the time he ran. And I think by the time Rio rolled around, he was actually 41, and he became the oldest person to debut at the Olympics in the marathon, because that was his first Olympic Games. So yeah, he's got that claim to being the oldest person to debut at the marathon. So it's pretty impressive, and I think it just goes to show that you can be running well into your 30s and competing well. So, yeah, he's been around a while.
What's Scott's background? I think he was a 10,000 metre runner before a marathon, or he was a
Yeah,
national cross country champion at one stage, wasn't he?
yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he won one at some stage. So he's got some really good range. Like I think he's ran 13 and a half for 5K. And I've just got him in the 10K now, which is good. I think he ran a Zatopek, and I think he ran 28:30 or something like that. So I've got him over the 10K, and I think I've got him in the half now as well, but he's got me in the marathon. But yeah,
But you
he's
haven't
well
done
and
a
truly.
marathon, have you?
No, not yet. So
Yeah, so probably hang around at half for a while.
yeah,
But I'm sure you've got like a good marathon in you. All a marathon is just the mileage, really, and making sure you don't do too much really fast stuff, and then you just run a marathon. But here's me saying that, but that's from what I've learned. What is the most satisfying race of your career so far that you can think of?
yeah, good question. There's a few. I struggle to narrow it down to one, and they're all kind of different distances. So I think that 1500, that state champs 1500 that I won was that was quite satisfying, because I was kind of like, oh, here I am beating all these 1500 meter guys, and I'm not a 1500 meter guy. So I quite like that, because that's not I'm not a 1500 meter runner. So it was quite good beating all these guys that were 1500 meter runners. So I enjoyed that. And Zatopek just gone, where I ran, like, that ended up being a 30 second PB, or just over 30 seconds. So that was awesome. And it was a race where I felt good the whole time. Like, you just got in the zone, and the last mile was hard work, but that one was up there. And then probably my most recent race, when I went over to Japan and did a half marathon over there, and ended up running 62:50, which was a 2-minute PB. So that was quite satisfying, because I'd done a few half marathons before, but had never really raced a half. I'd get to 16K and I'd spent my bickies, and I wouldn't be in the race, and I just felt like it was just a survival. Like, I wasn't actually racing a half marathon. I was getting to 15, 16K, and I was just too fatigued, and it was just a slow decline from there. Whereas this race over in Japan, just all kind of clicked again, and ran a big PB and ended up winning the race, which was quite cool. Been over in Japan, where distance running so big, and there was actually big crowds out watching this half marathon, and I had no idea who was in the race, and didn't have any idea the people I was running next to, and didn't really know where I was going. So probably a mixture of those, that 1500 and then the 10K and then the half, I think, are probably my most satisfying races, I'd say. But yeah.
I didn't hear you mention your first Australian cross-country title.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there was a few years there where there wasn't a lot of people doing cross-country, especially nationals. So yeah, I don't know. I was really pleased to win, and I never thought I'd be a national champion. So it was nice, but I don't think I ever raced really that well in those races. Like, I don't look back and go, wow, my performance was really good. I think I performed well compared to who was there on the day, but I never look back and think, geez, I really peaked well, and I was in top shape for this race. And that's the thing. There was a lot of guys, a lot of national level guys that weren't at those races. So I don't think I know I wasn't beating the best in Australia, but you can only beat who's there on the day. But I just don't think that I was on top of my performance those days. So I think they're probably a little bit further down the list, but I'm still, like, obviously really proud to be an Australian champion. because you can't really take that away from anyone. And then to do it 2 years in a row, yeah, it was really, that meant a lot to me. And I really love cross country. So they were really important. And I think, yeah, it's hard to separate the two, the first one or the second one, but I just don't think I ran out of my skin those days. So they're not as memorable for me, I suppose. Yeah. And I really like racing for time. Like that's a really big thing for me rather than the win. Like I'd rather run a PB and finish second or third than win and not run a PB. So I think the times just hold a little bit more.
Well, it's a bit hard to run a time over cross country because it's so variable. So
yeah, that's true. And especially the not last year's, the year before was at Mullaney up in Queensland, and it was yeah, you were running on the side of a mountain nearly, which was good and quite challenging. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't think, just how I felt and all that kind of stuff, it just wasn't a massive performance for me, I suppose, compared to that 10K and the half marathon. So obviously with COVID and all that kind of stuff, it kind of put a bit of because I was meant to be going to the World Half Marathon Champs over in Poland, and then I was actually going to go over to America and do Peyton Jordan, the 10K at Stanford there, and kind of throw my hat in the ring and possibly, I don't know if you can. I felt quite good at Zatopek, and I didn't feel like I was bottoming out, I suppose. Like I felt like there was still a little bit more there to give. So my plan was to kind of go over to Stanford and just see if I could run another big PB and possibly get the qualifier for Tokyo. So that was the kind of plan, but that's kind of all fallen apart now. And but yeah, I think for me, it's the natural progression is kind of going further, and I'd be keen to have a crack at a marathon soon, and yeah, try and make a team for the marathon to one of the world championships, or who knows when the Olympics will be. So see how that goes. But yeah, that's kind of the plan. But I don't know, it's there's not much going on at the moment, so it's hard to really, you can talk all you want, but yeah, you can't really back it up with any action at all. So we'll just wait and see. But I'm hoping once my injury comes, once I can train properly on my injury and all that, I'll and races start to open up again, I think I'll probably look to do a marathon and just get one under the belt. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to run so fast at Zatopek, and that was a bit of a shock. And I've still kind of got my blinkers on. I'm a half marathon guy, whereas I suppose now I could kind of be a 10K guy as well, running that time. So yeah, I'm not really too sure what the next race is going to be, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll just have to wait and see. So
yes, it's very well, interesting and trying time for athletes or everyone. But you know, once you start taking 30 seconds off, you know,
yeah,
we look at young guys like McSwain, you know, once they start taking big chunks off like that, and then you're starting to get the aerobic dominance or the more dominant aerobic systems going, that it's you're off and away if you keep your program going. So just sticking to your program, which has obviously worked, that will get you there. And that brings me to your program. Now, what does your basic program consist of in terms of a lot of steady running, maybe? And
yeah. So it's pretty traditional in the whole kind of Australian distance, what the normal week looks like. We used to actually do 3 sessions a week. So we used to do, when Scott first started coaching me, he was kind of keen for me to do quite, well, what I thought was quite big mileage, but it wasn't really, like, because I was running 100K a week if I was lucky before he started coaching me. And it was a very steady kind of progression up, and it probably took, I reckon nearly 2 years to actually respond and for me to start to handle the training. So it was a very slow build, but my typical week would be Monday. I'd probably look to do just a very easy run. I'd probably look to do about 14 to 16k on a Monday. I try and include hills wherever I can. So it's pretty easy to do in Bendigo. It's kind of hard to find a flat run. And I'd always do some strides at the end of that as well. So that would normally be, often 15k, very steady. Like I don't look at my watch because I think I've got a good sense of how I'm feeling. And I think if you're feeling tired, you'll run slower, and that's okay because that's your body saying, hey, I'm tired, I need to run slower. So I only glance down to make sure I'm not running too fast kind of thing. But yeah, very easy. And I know you look at a lot of guys and they kind of running 4-minute Ks for those easy runs, but they're running on the dead flat. Whereas like as soon as you get in the hills, you're working quite hard if you're running that pace. So I just don't worry about pace on that Monday. Tuesday, I'll do a morning run. So that's with the kids I coach at school. So that's sometimes 4K, sometimes 6K. And then I'll do a session in the afternoon. Normally, it's pretty staple stuff, like 8x or we have a thing called lake laps, which down at the lake in Bendigo, it's 1,500 around. So we do 1,200 on and then a 300 float. And then
Which lake's that? Which are the two lakes?
Lake Waruna.
Waruna, okay.
Yeah, the one in town. So
yeah.
Do things like that. And then, so it's normally that kind of aerobic VO2 kind of max work on a Tuesday. And then Wednesday is normally this progressed out. So it started at 16K. And then since I was kind of focusing a bit more on the half marathon, it got out to kind of 20K on a Wednesday morning. So I'd start that run at 6 o'clock. So it's a long way, especially when you do the session at 4:30 on a Tuesday Arvo, and then you're kind of finishing that at 6 o'clock. And then 12 hours later, you're going out for your 20K medium long run. That can be quite hard sometimes, but got used to it. And I actually quite enjoyed that run. So we had a good group that do that. And we do some strides at the end. Once again, that's a pretty easy pace where often the first few Ks are very close to 5-minute K pace or even slower, especially in winter where it's dark and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a very easy run. And then Thursday, that was again another easy run. So one of the big changes I made halfway through last year, which I think led to me running quite well over the 10.5, was instead of doing 3 sessions a week, we cut it back to 2 sessions.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes, absolute sense. Yeah.
Just focused more on quality rather than quantity. I kind of found, because I have a fair few early mornings at work, that I'd get quite tired after the Tuesday session and then the Wednesday medium long run. And I felt like I just couldn't get back up to even. I just felt like I was just quite tired. And by Thursday, when the session rolled around, I was starting the session tired and fatigued rather than starting it feeling good. So we cut the 3 sessions and pulled it back to 2. So Thursday was just normally an hour, just nice and easy. Normally turns into about 13 or 14K. And then Friday, we started doing the sessions on Fridays. And Fridays would be a real mix depending on what I was kind of training for. So I'm lucky I have Fridays off from work. So I had a bit of flexibility to train what I say is a full-time athlete, where I don't have to be training before or after school. So that's where we'd sometimes do quite a popular one is a hills, threshold, and then hills. So a bit of a mixture of those, or I'll do some longer hills, or I'll do 3K reps or mile reps or 2K reps or some of the longer stuff, or sometimes I'll be at the track and doing 400s, or just kind of depend. If we're gearing towards a 10K, I'd be at the track doing 400s and 800s and 600s, whereas if I was doing more half marathon stuff or cross country stuff, I'd do minute on, minute floats or hills and thresholds and that kind of stuff. So Friday can just vary depending on what I'm training for, but normally that's normally by the time I do a warm-up session, cool down, and I do a afternoon run as well, that normally gets out to kind of like a 20 or 24k day. And then Saturday is just another easy hour. So that's normally 14 or 15k, just nice and steady through the bush. And then I do a double run again on Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday just do the normal Sunday long run. We had progressed that up to what was it? I think we got up to 34k. We were just kind of hovering around 2 hours for a while there. Just gradually building up to 2 hours, where for a while, 1 hour 45 felt like a marathon nearly, but I kind of got used to that and then stepped up to 2 hours. And the first time I did that, it felt pretty hard, but you kind of get used to it. And then every now and then I might add in a bit of a session in that long run. So we might do, say, 2 hours with 2 5k surges at 15 and 25k, where you look to run like maybe 320s or 325, something like that. And that was possible because we'd only done the 2 sessions during the week. So we kind of put a bit more emphasis on the long run and dropped the session. So yeah, that would normally get me 170 to 180k. That was kind of my sweet spot. I think my biggest was about 185, but I was probably consistently around that 170 to 180, I think. So it varied depending on what we were training for. So if, like, I remember when I was doing a lot of 1500s, my mileage was probably only 160k a week. So a lot less mileage, and I'd be spending more time at the track doing 200s and 300s and 400s and that kind of stuff. Whereas as my distance has grown, I've kind of doing less stuff on the track and just running a bit more, and including those three doubles during the week, which is just really easy, just essentially time on feet nearly. So I'd say most of my running is just easy running, where I'm running with someone and having a conversation just like we are now. So yeah, that's probably the normal week for me.
Yep, perfect. Okay, now another thing. I know you occasionally train with weights, or is it regularly?
Yeah, regularly, a fair bit. Yeah. So it's one thing I'm really big on, and I'm surprised. I don't know why more runners don't. And so I'm lucky at the school I work at. We've got quite a good gym, so I've got a lot of access to that, which is good. But I do some weight training or strength training on a Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So I actually do it 3 times a week. And I'm kind of doing power cleans, back squats, deadlifts, front squats, all that kind of stuff. So kind of, around that Olympic lifts kind of stuff. And I love it. I really enjoy it because it's so different to running. Like with running, when you're doing your sessions, you're such a slave to your stopwatch because you might be doing 400s and you've got 45 seconds rest. So you'll hit your lap button on your watch and you're watching your time and you're like, oh, like this doesn't really feel like a rest because you're just always like seeing how long you got and you're thinking, oh, I've got to do this amount of reps. Whereas I quite like in the gym, you can lift your weights and then sit down on a bench and just kind of chill out for a little bit. So I really enjoy it. I think it's a really critical part of my running. And I think it's a really big part of why I haven't. I had a really long stint of not getting injured and not having any interruptions. So I think that's really important. And I think that's why I excelled a fair bit in cross country, because I was quite strong through doing a lot of that gym stuff as well. So I think it's a no-brainer, and I would prioritize my gym session over all my doubles and all that kind of stuff. Like I hear a lot of runners say, oh, I want to go to the gym, but I just don't have time to do it. And they're going out and doing a double run that day. And like, well, you've clearly got time because you're going out and doing another half hour of running. So I think it's an awesome aid to my running. And I'm continuing to do it, and I actually really enjoy it. So
in terms of loading on the whole body energies, for want of a better term, your whole energy, your energetic state, or your psychological, physiological energy stocks. Weight
Yep.
training with enough weight to provoke a really good stimulus to your fast twitch fibers is very heavy, near maximal stuff. How often do you do that? Or do you do that,
Yes.
or do you do lighter weights, or?
Yeah, no, so I do, well, I think they're quite heavy, but they're not, I know they're not that heavy. And I like to compare it to body weight, because I think that's the best way of kind of scoping how heavy are you lifting. So I weigh about 60 kilos, and 3 times a week I'll do deadlifts of 50 or 55 or 60 kilos. So with deadlifts and back squats, if everything's going well, I'll lift at my body weight. And then there's normally one session a week where I'll just try and just go an extra 5 kilos, just so I am mixing it up a little bit and getting those adaptations. So yeah, I don't do any stuff with just a 20 kilo barbell. It's all quite heavy for me. I think it's heavy. And yeah, I think it's really important. Like, you see a lot of runners that just go in and they're scared to lift a weight because they think they're going to put on muscle. And like, no, if you're running 100K a week, you won't put on any muscle. Like,
Good luck, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
Well, it depends on the
no,
genetics too, I suppose. Because
yeah, exactly. And diet as well. Like, it's really hard to build muscle. And I think people forget that, and they think that they're going to put on all this weight and all that kind of stuff. But no, I'd like to think I lift heavy. I know that in comparison to a lot of people that aren't distance runners, it's not that heavy, but it's quite heavy for me. So yeah, and I find those days where I do push that little bit more, you wake up and you feel the DOMs the next day, and your legs are a bit tight and all that. But if I'm just doing a normal,
DOMS just translates that for people who don't know. That's delayed onset of muscle soreness. That's what you're talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. So I'll get that on the days that I'm feeling where I do push my weights up a little bit, or I might do a slightly different exercise. But I've found I've been in such a routine that I can do a gym session and then run the next day, and I don't even notice that I've done a gym session. So a lot of people kind of say, oh, I went to the gym once and my legs were sore for 2 days afterwards. And you're kind of like, yeah, well, if you don't run at all, then you go for a run, your legs are going to be sore. If you do any exercise you haven't done for a long time, they're going to be sore. So it's just about getting into that routine, I find. So yeah, I don't think it impacts my running at all. I think it has it doesn't impact it negatively. I think it has a really good positive impact. And I'm trying to continue to lift heavy with a good technique. So I'm always looking to to push myself and catch up to some other people that are in there. So it's good.
What would you recommend to a very young Andy Buchanan?
It's a good question. So I didn't start training till I was 16, 17. And it was good, but at the same time, it took me 3 or 4 years to kind of catch up to the people my age. Because I just couldn't jump into doing 100K a week and all that kind of stuff. But I wished that I had a bit more guidance when I was younger, and that I was kind of hitting my straps kind of mid to early 20s rather than late 20s. So yeah, I would have liked to have a coach a bit earlier on, and do a lot more kind of distance stuff. For my first few years, I was kind of focusing on 8s and 15s, which was good because I think it's good to build that speed when you're younger. So probably just to have a coach from a younger age, I think. But it's a fine line. Like, I don't know. I don't think anyone in primary school, they should just be going out. Like, I don't even know if they should be running. I think it's a tough sport, and it's a lot of the same stuff over and over. And I just hate to see there's some kids that train too hard when they're young, and then by the time they hit 16, they're sick of the sport, and they're not going to get the best out of themselves. So yeah, probably I'd tell myself just to go out and get a coach maybe a bit earlier and just take running just that little bit more serious. But I think that's kind of all. I think that's all that I'd change. I don't know. I think I'd still stay in Bendigo because it's so good for training, and all that kind of stuff. So I think everything else I've done okay, and I don't think I'd change too much. So yeah, that's probably it.
All right. Well, thanks, Andy. Been a pleasure. Okay.
That's right. Thanks for having me on, Keith. It's been good.
Yep. We'll talk again.